What's up, bozos? Welcome back to Office Hours with the Professor, the show where I say things. Today, we'll be covering part 2 of my Cavemen Rule series. We'll ask the question of what exactly defines a person from a paleoanthropological point of view. Real quick before we get started, I want to give a shout out to my homie Piano Tinkerer. Thank you for your advice on the camera angle. I'm even just looking at this with the camera right now, and it looks great. So thanks a lot. So I just want to start by saying that I am not a paleoanthropologist by any means. My background is in historical linguistics, but I do think paleoanthropology is a cool topic. And it's a hobby that I love sharing with people. So I hope that if any viewers out there are in fact anthropologists, paleo or otherwise, you'll contribute to the discussion with your 2 cents. I would love to learn more about this stuff. Before we start, I'd like to introduce a few important terms. In my high school biology class, I learned the mnemonic device, King Philip came over for good spaghetti. Right? So kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, right? For biological taxonomy. So modern people, or as we call them, Homo sapiens, therefore belong to the genus Homo and the species Sapiens. So as far as we know, we're the only member of our genus still around, but in the past there were lots of others. The most well-known are Homo habilis, which was extant from about 2.8 million years ago, and Homo erectus, extant from 1.9 million years ago, or as I like to say, mya. Get it? M-Y-A million years ago, mya. So extant from 1.9 mya. Now, that said, let's get something out of the way. Shut up. Got it out of your system? Good. Let's be adults here. Another well-known species was Neanderthalensis, or Neanderthals, extant from about 250,000 years ago, or as I like to say, kya. Get it? So, when asking the question, what are people, there are a few metrics that you could go by. Biologically, you could say that a person is any member of the genus Homo. This includes not just our species, Homo sapiens, but also our extinct ancestors and relatives. So by that definition, quote, people have been around for 2.8 million years. Personally, though, I think that definition is way too broad. Early Homo, so habilis to a lesser extent erectus, did not have the cognitive and social abilities that characterize, quote, people. On the other hand, we could also define people as belonging only to Homo sapiens, there it is, but I would view that as too narrow. That definition would overlook the growing body of evidence that points to other Homo species as acting in a cognitively and culturally advanced way. Most convincingly, these guys are our cousins, the Neanderthals. Just a web of mystery. Can you get me through these changes? On the other hand, let's consider for a moment the spiritual side of this discussion. Now, personally, I'm a Christian, and so that's the basis I take for my opinion. You can even see on my wall my beautiful icon of St. Peter the Aleut. But anyway, basically, I would say that People began when they were able to fully comprehend the moral ramifications of their decisions and, despite knowing these ramifications, make the wrong choice. That is, in theological terms, the fall of man. Now, at what point did we become morally responsible for our decisions? So, could a Homo erectus, for instance, engage in a conversation about morality or be prosecuted in court for murder? How about a Neanderthal? I'm not sure. On a similar note, I would say that people became people when they became aware of the presence of the divine or spiritual. Now, of course, your mileage may vary depending on your own beliefs or lack thereof. I just gotta know. Finally, there's the linguistic aspect. People can talk. That is, they can use what we linguists call articulated language. They can speak a language that draws distinctions between different phonemes, units of sound, and morphemes, units of meaning. So these phonemes and morphemes can be put together to construct an original utterance about whatever topic you like. An articulated language has a degree of predictability as to word order and syntax. Articulated languages have lexica of possible words. Languages can be adapted to any cultural or situational context to articulate the entirety of the human experience. It doesn't matter how small the lexicon is. For example, Dameen, an extinct ceremonial language of Australia, had a lexicon of only about 150 different morphemes. Neither does it matter how little or how much grammatical inflection a language has. Classical Chinese, not to be confused with Old Chinese, by the way, classical Chinese has almost no grammatical inflection at all and very little affixation. If it can be adapted to any possible human situation or interaction, it is a language. There is no such thing as a, quote, primitive language. Whenever people began to use articulated languages, its speakers could have used it to talk about Shakespeare as easily as they could have used it to talk about lightning being scary. That is, if they had the appropriate background knowledge. So, to review, people are able to act in a cognitively and culturally advanced way, whatever that means. 2, people are morally responsible for their actions. 3, people have a sense of the spiritual or supernatural. 4, people can communicate using articulated language. The question then is this: when and where were the first communities that checked off all of these boxes? The first category is especially difficult to define. Some paleoanthropologists use the term behavioral modernity, which also encompasses the other 3 categories. Others, prominent among them the towering badass that is John Shea of Stony Brook University, have criticized this term. In particular, Shea refers to the term behavioral variability, which I think makes a lot more sense. So go give his academia.edu page a look if you're interested. Really cool stuff. Basically, behavioral modernity, or variability as you might want to call it, refers to if you took a baby from the 21st century, a modern baby, and you switched it with a kid from one of these communities, however many tens of thousands of years ago this might have been, would they have grown up the same way? Would they have acted the same way? Would the kid from back then have the ability to grow up as a normal 21st century kid? And would our 21st century kid have no distinction between his Paleolithic peers? That is behavioral modernity. If we're going to be rigidly, and I would say unnecessarily, conservative with the evidence we accept, points 1, 3, and 4 can't really be demonstrably proven until fairly recently, the last 40,000 years or so. And point 2 is a philosophical question that can only be inferred. However, every day we are unearthing more evidence to show that people have been behaving in the same way that we do now for at least 100,000 years. And even this number is being slowly pushed back to about 200,000. So there are even tantalizing glimmers of what we might call, quote, modern behavior going back as far as 400,000 years. But we'll talk about that later. Now, I can see all of my academically conservative viewers revving up their comment boxes to type something along the lines of, "Actually, behavioral modernity and articulated language emerged last week." Relax, guys. One problem with academia these days is that a lot of experts refuse to consider new possibilities until their refusal to accept them makes them look ridiculous. That doesn't mean that we should say that Homo habilis was having philosophical discussions in Proto-Indo-European while they scavenged rhinoceros marrow. But on the other hand, we should be open, at least, to the possibility that behavioral variability, as Shea puts it, goes back further than we are currently comfortable thinking. Now, in my layman's opinion, I would say that a good estimate for the emergence of behavioral variability was about 200,000 years ago. But there are, like I say, tantalizing pieces of evidence that go back even further. If someone asked me, "Hey bro, how long have people been around?" I would say 200,000 years, maybe a little more, using the definition of, quote, people as discussed above. So, what do you think? Go ahead and contribute to the discussion by leaving a comment. And in our next video, we're going to briefly go over the early Homo species that existed before, quote, people in the behavioral variability sense. So I'll see you then. Everybody take care. Bye now.